Let's do this. We've got 4chan material for tonight that's dark and deeply wrong, threads that are real and unrelenting. These stories will get to you. Like the video, subscribe, turn it up, and let's begin. The job was babysitting rich people's houses while they slept. That's the honest version. Officially, I sat in a low-lit room off I-35 in Austin, a screen wall in front of me, coffee going cold, watching around 40 properties on the night rotation. Motion sensors, door contacts, interior and exterior cams, temperature, water, garage. If a light blinked yellow, I logged it. If it went red, I called the client, then dispatch. March 2023. It had been raining on and off for 3 days. The parking lot smelled like wet cedar every time I came in at 10, and the shift was slow enough that I'd started ranking the houses by how boring their alarms were. The Redbud place was near the bottom of that list. Up in the hills west of the city, one of those glass and limestone builds where the kitchen was bigger than my apartment. Dad worked in finance, Mom did something with a non-profit, and there was a kid, maybe 8, from what I'd caught on the daytime feed. 3 people, predictable, alarm always armed by 11:15. At 2:57 a.m., their entry hallway motion sensor lit up. I remember I didn't even sit forward. Motion in a hallway at 3 in the morning is usually the cat, or the HVAC, kicking on and a curtain moving in the vent draft. They didn't have a cat. I clicked the interior cam. The hallway was empty. The sensor was still ticking green on the panel, still reading a body in that zone, but the camera showed a straight, tiled corridor with a console table and a coat rack, and nothing on it. I scrubbed the feed back 30 seconds. Same corridor. Nothing. Then, at 2:56:41, the sensor tripped, and something moved through the frame of the entry cam, not the front door. The front door contact was solid green, locked, never opened. The cam pointed at the door, showed it closed the whole time. But between one frame and the next, a shape passed through the far edge of the shot, low and quick, like someone crouched, cutting across from the direction of the mudroom. I sat forward then. First thing you do is check the other sensors. Basement, garage, backsliders, all the windows. Everything read closed and sealed. Alarm state still, armed, stay, no zone faults. According to the system, nobody had come in. I pulled up the family. Bedroom cams are opt-in and they had them on, which people usually only do if they've had a scare before. Dad and Mom were in the master, both asleep, Dad on his back, Mom curled toward him. Kid's room, kid was in bed, one leg out from under the blanket. I counted them twice. 3 people, all accounted for, all asleep. Back to the hallway feed. The motion sensor was still lit, steady green, then blinking, then steady again, the pattern it does when a body is moving slow, in and out of the cone. I had the camera live, the hallway was empty. I could see the whole thing, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, and the sensor kept tripping. I'd been doing this 18 months, sensors false trigger, sunlight on a mirror, a spider on the lens, a bat outside a window. There's always a reason. I told myself the PIR was probably glitching. Maybe a bug had crawled inside the housing. I made a note to flag it for the tech team in the morning. Then the hallway camera adjusted its exposure. That's a thing those cams do when the light in a room changes, even a little. The auto iris hunts for a second, the picture brightens or darkens, and then it settles. It happened at 3:01:12. I watched the whole hallway shift half a stop lighter and then correct back down. Nothing in that hallway had moved. No light had come on. No door had opened, but the camera had seen something change. I pulled the audio. Most interior cams pick up a low room tone, HVAC, a fridge if it's close. The Redbud hallway audio was the usual soft house hum, and then, at 3:01:14, 2 seconds after the camera did its little dance, there was a sound like a hand, or a sleeve, brushing a wall. One short scrape, then nothing. I stopped pretending it was a glitch. I opened the protocol page on my second monitor and started running the checklist. Interior motion, no visual confirmation. Door contacts intact, alarm armed, occupants verified in place. That's a specific ticket type. You don't call the client first on that one, you call dispatch. While the phone was ringing, I switched to exterior cams. Front porch empty, wet from a light rain. Driveway, both cars, no other vehicle. Side yard, gate closed, back deck empty. Basement well, the cam looking into the window pit on the north side. That one showed the pit and the window, and it all looked fine, except when I zoomed, the pane wasn't flush. Off by maybe an inch. That window didn't have a contact. Dispatch picked up. I gave them the address, the code, the summary. Interior motion, no forced entry visible, family asleep, possible unauthorized presence. They said 7 minutes. 7 minutes is not a long time to sit and watch a hallway. I kept the interior cam up the whole way. The motion sensor cycled twice more, at 3:03 and 3:05. The second time, the audio picked up a floorboard, one soft creak, from the direction of the living room. That cam showed an empty room. I panned as far as it would go. Couch, TV, rug, a backpack on the ottoman. At 3:06, the kitchen sensor blinked green for 4 seconds and went dark. At 3:07, the mudroom sensor did the same. Whoever it was, they were moving toward the back of the house, away from where the family slept. I remember catching myself hoping that, and feeling sick about hoping it, because I wasn't supposed to be hoping anything. I was supposed to be watching a hallway. At 3:09, the basement door sensor logged an open and close, 2 seconds apart. Then nothing. Every zone in the house went quiet. The security team pulled up at 3:11. I watched them go through it on the porch and interior cams both. Dad answered the door in a t-shirt, half awake, confused. 2 guards did the walk, room by room, nothing missing off the counter, nothing pulled out of drawers. Kid didn't wake up. Mom stayed in the bedroom doorway with her arms crossed. In the basement, the window on the north side was wide open, cold air coming in. Below it, on the concrete floor, there were wet prints from a boot, size 10 or 11, coming in and going back out. Somewhere upstairs, on carpet or tile, they'd dried off enough to leave nothing behind. The guard walked me through it on the phone. He said, "Whoever it was is gone." But he was inside for like 7 minutes, and he didn't take a single thing. They went through it with the family in the morning. Nothing missing. Nothing moved that anyone could see. Just prints, and an open window in a basement nobody used. The one part they couldn't get past was the window itself. It had a latch, a simple flip latch, on the inside. From outside, you couldn't open that window without breaking the glass, and the glass wasn't broken. Somebody had unlocked it from the inside. Dad said he hadn't been down there in weeks. Mom said the same. The kid didn't even like the basement. All 3 of them, separately, told the responding officer that they hadn't opened that window, and they didn't know who had. I quit the job about 6 weeks later. Before I did, I pulled the Redbud interior footage from the week before the incident, wanting to see if anyone had been walking through the house during the day. The archive for that house had been wiped. Standard 30-day rotation, they told me. Normal. I still have a copy of the hallway footage from that night. There's nobody in it. Just an empty corridor, a sensor light going green and back, and 3 people in 3 separate rooms, sleeping through all of it. I moderated r/missing people for almost 4 years before I walked away from it. The thing that made me quit happened over about 6 days in April 2022, and I still don't have a good ending for it, which is part of why I'm writing this down. For context, I worked from home in a 1-bedroom in Ballard, north side of Seattle. My day job was a boring data role at an insurance company. The moderating was volunteer, like everything on Reddit. I did it because my cousin disappeared in 2011 near Coeur d'Alene and was never found, and after a couple years of therapy, I decided the way I was going to sit with that was to help other families keep their threads clean and useful. That's it. There's no bigger story to me being there. Most of the work is boring. You remove psychics. You remove true crime hobbyists who show up to speculate about the boyfriend. You approve the family's daily bumps so the case doesn't fall off the front page. 90% of it is copy-paste. The thread I want to talk about was for a girl named Marissa, 19, last seen leaving a gas station outside Bend, Oregon in late March. Her mom was posting almost every day. Little updates, mostly nothing. Sometimes a tip from a trucker that didn't pan out. Regular stuff. On April 4th, an account started replying in that thread. Username was something forgettable, a word and 4 numbers. I checked it because I check everyone new on that sub. The account was 3 years old. No prior posts, no prior comments. Just sitting there since 2019, dormant. That alone isn't a red flag. People make throwaways and forget them. Sometimes they come back years later when something in the news hits them personally. The first comment was short. It said Marissa's nail polish had been a pale blue, almost gray, and asked if her mom had checked whether the bottle was still on her dresser or if she'd taken it with her. I sat with that for a minute. Then I scrolled the mom's posts. She'd never mentioned nail polish. Not the color, not that Marissa painted her nails at all. I searched news coverage from the local Bend paper and the Oregonian. Nothing about it either. I flagged the comment for the mom to see and messaged her privately, asked if the detail meant anything. She wrote back inside 20 minutes. She said yes, Marissa had been wearing that color the night she left. She said she'd noticed the bottle was gone from the dresser 2 days after, and she hadn't told anyone because she thought maybe her daughter had just taken it in her bag, and it felt like a stupid thing to bring up to detectives. Okay, so someone knew a small private thing. That happens. Sometimes it's a friend who doesn't want to identify themselves. I asked the account, politely, in a reply, how they knew. No answer. The next day, the same account posted again. This time, it said Marissa smoked American spirits. the yellow pack, and that she'd been trying to quit and had probably only had 2 or 3 left when she disappeared. Her mom confirmed the brand. She did not confirm the 2 or 3 left part. She said she had no way to know that. I want to be honest about what I was doing at that point. I wasn't scared, I was interested. This is going to sound bad, but when you moderate that kind of sub for long enough, you get a little numb, and part of you is always hoping one of the weird accounts turns out to be the person who knows something real. So I kept the comments up, I messaged the account. I asked if they wanted to talk over DM, nothing. On the 3rd day, the account posted the cat's name. Marissa had a cat that she'd left with her mom when she moved out of the house the year before. The cat's name was Booter, spelled that way, which the mom said Marissa had made up when she was 8. Booter had never been in any post, any article, any social media the mom could think of. Marissa's own Instagram was private and had 11 followers. That's when I stopped feeling curious. I blocked the account from the subreddit, removed the 3 comments, and sent a report up to the admins with all the screenshots and a note about the pattern. Admins on Reddit are slow. I knew I wasn't going to hear back for at least a day. I closed my laptop and went out to get groceries at the QFC on 15th because I wanted to be around people for an hour. When I got back, it had been maybe 50 minutes since I sent the report. I made coffee, sat down, opened Reddit. There was a message in my inbox. Not a comment reply, not a mod mail. A private message from a different account, one I didn't recognize, created that same afternoon. It had my street address, my apartment number, the name of my building. Under that, it said, "Don't rush." That was the whole message, 3 words and my address. I want to describe what that actually feels like, because I think people who haven't had it happen assume it's dramatic. It isn't. It's a very quiet thing. Your ears go a little hot. You look at the door, you look at the window, then you look at the message again because you're sure you misread it. I read it maybe 8 times, then I got up and I locked the deadbolt, and then I locked the chain, and then I stood in my kitchen and I couldn't remember what I'd been about to do. I remember the fridge was humming. I remember the coffee was still dripping. I called my sister. She lives in a townhouse in Renton with her husband and their kid. I didn't cry or anything. I just said I needed to come stay for a while, and she said okay without asking why, which I still love her for. I packed a bag with clothes and my laptop and my passport, which in hindsight was a weird thing to grab, and I drove down 5 with my phone on the passenger seat, checking my mirrors more than I needed to. I stayed with her for 2 weeks. I filed a report with Seattle PD. The officer who took it was polite, and clearly did not know what a subreddit was. He wrote things down. He gave me a case number. Nothing came of it that I ever heard about. Reddit admins wrote back 4 days later. They said the original account and the message account were both registered through the same VPN, which they'd traced back as best they could to an exit node in Portland, which is not the same as saying the person was in Portland. A VPN exit could be anywhere. That was as much as they could tell me, and they were pretty clear it was as much as they were going to try. Marissa was never found. Her mom stopped posting sometime that summer. I don't know if that means she gave up or if something happened. I didn't ask, because at that point, I'd already stepped down. I handed the mod tools over to a guy from Michigan who'd been helping out for a year, and I logged out of that account, and I haven't opened it since. What I keep coming back to isn't the address. Anyone can dig up an address if they try. It's that this person had the nail polish, and the cigarettes, and the cat's name, which means at some point they were close enough to Marissa to know those things. And at some point, for whatever reason, they decided the person they wanted to talk to about it wasn't the police. It was me. I moved apartments in June. I don't do any moderation anywhere anymore. When people ask why I quit, I usually just say I got tired of it, which is close enough to true. The night radiology shift at the hospital in North Phoenix runs from 10 in the evening to 6 in the morning, and most of it is quiet. That January I'd been doing it about 8 months. You get used to the rhythm. Coffee at 10, another around 2, and by 3 you're pretty much alone with the PACS workstation and whatever the ER decides to send up. That night was slow. A couple of head CTs from a wreck on the I-17, an ankle from a guy who slipped on his kitchen tile, and then a small stack of outpatient MRs that had been sitting since the day shift. Neurology sometimes lets those pile up. They get flagged for whoever's on overnight to clear before morning rounds. The reading room is on the 2nd floor, back corner, no windows, just the hum of the monitors and the AC pushing dry desert air through the vent above my chair. I like it back there. No one bothers you. The tech, a woman named Rosa, was down the hall running a late scan, so it was basically me and the machine. I opened the queue and worked through the list. Knees, a lumbar, a shoulder, nothing interesting, which is what you want. Around 4 in the morning, I got to the last one. Male patient, 41, referred by a neurologist named Patel for recurring headaches and 1 episode of what the notes called brief visual disturbance, brain MRI with and without contrast. Routine. I pulled up the sequences, started with the T2 axials, worked my way through. Normal ventricles, no mass effect, no enhancement anywhere on the post-contrast. The optic nerves looked clean. Sinuses were a little congested, but nothing that would matter. I was already writing the impression in my head. Unremarkable study, no acute intracranial abnormality, the kind of report I could do in my sleep. Then I hit one slice on the flare sequence and stopped. There was a line. Very thin, maybe a pixel or two wide, running along the border between the left frontal lobe and the falx. Straight, way too straight. In a real brain, nothing is that straight. I figured artifact right away, some kind of glitch from the coil, or a stray metal fragment, patient with a piercing he forgot to mention, that kind of thing. I zoomed in. The line didn't behave like an artifact. Artifacts usually smear or repeat across slices in a predictable way. This one was only on that single slice. I scrolled up and down through the sequence. Gone above, gone below. Just that one image. Okay. Weird, but not the weirdest thing I'd seen. I opened the raw DICOM in a different viewer, one that lets you tilt the reconstruction plane, just to make sure it wasn't a rendering issue in PACS. I dragged the plane a few degrees to the left. The line broke up into smaller segments. I dragged it back. Solid line again. I kept rotating. And at maybe 22 degrees off the standard axial, the segments lined up different. Not a line anymore. Letters. I sat back from the monitor. I remember doing that, physically sliding the chair back a few inches like you do when you almost spill something on the keyboard. The letters were small, but they were letters. English, print, not script. I've been here a long time, don't tell him. I read it 3 or 4 times. Then I got up and walked out of the reading room, went to the break room down the hall, ran cold water over my wrists, stood there for maybe a minute. I remember the fluorescent light in the break room was flickering a little, the way they do when they're about to go, and I remember thinking that was a stupid thing to notice right then. I went back and looked again, still there. My first thought was that someone was screwing with me. There are stories in radiology about techs putting hidden stuff in phantom scans as a joke, drawing a smiley face in the field of view, that kind of thing. But this was a live patient scan from that afternoon, on a real person with a real chart and a real neurologist waiting for the read. Nobody plays that joke on a real study. You'd lose your license. Second thought was a hardware issue, some kind of pattern in the coil noise that my brain was reading as text, the way people see faces in wood grain. I've had that happen with lung nodules. You stare long enough and everything starts to look suspicious. So I called down to the scanner suite and asked Rosa if she could run the guy again. He was still in the system as an inpatient observation. They were keeping him overnight because his blood pressure had spiked in the waiting room. Convenient for me. She said sure. She had a gap at 4:30. I watched the new sequences come in live. Flare, same slice thickness, same coil, same everything. I pulled up the axial at the level where the line had been. Nothing. Clean brain, clean falx. No line, no letters, no anything. I should have felt better. I didn't. I went back to the first study, the one from the afternoon, opened it in the tilt viewer, rotated to 22 degrees. I've been here a long time, don't tell him. I closed it, opened it again from scratch, loaded fresh from the archive, not from cache. Rotated. Same words, same place, same size. I tried it at other angles, thinking maybe I'd find something different, another sentence, some clue about what this was supposed to be. Nothing. Just that one angle, that one message, like it had been placed there for exactly one line of sight. I sat with it for a long time, longer than I want to admit. The sun was starting to come up outside somewhere, not that I could see it from that room, but you can feel the shift when the hospital starts to wake up. Elevators running more, voices in the hall. I wrote the report, no acute intracranial abnormality, no mass, no hemorrhage, no midline shift. Recommend clinical correlation, the standard language. I signed it and sent it to Patel. The patient went home the next afternoon. I checked the chart a few days later, just to see. Discharge summary said his headaches had already improved on the ward. They adjusted his blood pressure meds. Follow up in 6 weeks. He was fine. He is fine, as far as I know. I looked him up on our system again a couple of months ago, and there's nothing new. No return visits, no neurology follow-ups that stuck. I never deleted the original scan. I could have. Radiologists don't have a lot of reason to touch the archive, but I know how, and nobody would have questioned a note about a duplicate study on a repeat. I didn't do it. I don't fully know why. Part of me thought if I deleted it and then something happened to that guy later, I'd feel like I'd erased evidence of something. Part of me thought if I deleted it and it came back anyway, that would be worse, so it's still there. Sometimes on a slow shift, I open it. I don't do it often, maybe 3 or 4 times in the last year. I load it fresh, I rotate to 22 degrees, and I look. It's always there. Same words, same size, same place. I've never told the patient. I've never told Patel. I've never mentioned it to Rosa or any of the other night techs, and I haven't shown it to a single other radiologist. Not because I'm afraid they'd think I was crazy, honestly. They'd probably just say it's pareidolia and move on. That's not what stops me. What stops me is the second sentence. Not the first one. The first one I could explain to myself 100 ways. It's the second one that made me close the file the first time and walk out of the room. Don't tell him. I don't know who him is. I don't want to find out by telling him. I found 6 letters last November that were addressed to me by name. The paper on all of them was from 1887. The ink tested authentic. My advisor called it a coincidence. It wasn't. I was in my second year of a history master's at a university just outside Boston. I won't say which one. There's a private archive down in the Humanities building, donated in the 70s by an old New England family, and nobody had ever fully cataloged it. 3 moving boxes of correspondence, mostly bills and marriage announcements and complaints about the weather. My advisor gave it to me as a summer project that dragged into the fall. By the first week of November, I was down to the last folder. The reading room is in the basement. 1 window at ceiling level, no view except a slice of the loading dock. The kind of place where you hear the pipes talk to themselves. I liked it, actually. I'd bring a thermos of coffee, lock my phone in the little cage by the door, and work through the folder in silence. On a good day, I could get through 40 letters. On a bad day, I'd spend 3 hours squinting at a single page, because 1880s handwriting is a nightmare, and half the writers used ink that had turned the color of weak tea. The last folder was thinner than the rest. 12 letters, all still in their original envelopes, tied together with what looked like an old bootlace. That was the first thing that stopped me. The rest of the archive had been sorted into acid-free sleeves back in the 80s. This bundle looked like nobody had touched it since the day it went into the box. I put on my gloves, cut the string, and laid them out on the table. 6 of them were normal, business correspondence from a cotton merchant to a cousin up in Portsmouth. Dry stuff. I photographed them, made my notes, moved on. The other 6 had 2 initials on the envelope. My initials. Not common ones, the kind where, when you meet someone with the same first letter, you both do a little double take at the coffee counter. I want to be careful here, because I know how this sounds. Initials are initials. There are only so many combinations. I saw them, and I actually laughed, because it was such a small, strange coincidence to find at the tail end of a boring project. I took a picture on my phone to send to my girlfriend later. Then, I opened the first one. The paper was in good shape, folded 3 times, cream-colored, small water stain on the bottom corner. The handwriting was cleaner than most of what I'd been reading, like the writer had taken his time. The date at the top said October 3rd, 1887. The salutation used my full first name, spelled correctly. My name isn't spelled the way you'd expect. My grandfather picked the spelling from an old Cornish variant on my great-grandmother's side, and I've had to correct it on every substitute teacher's roll sheet since I was 5. It was on that page in brown ink, exactly the way it appears on my birth certificate. I sat there for a while. I told myself it was probably a name that had been common in the region once, and my grandfather had just borrowed something older. That was actually plausible. I put the letter down, walked out to the fountain in the hallway, drank 2 cups of water, came back and read the rest. It was short, 4 paragraphs. The writer said he hoped the letter found me in good health. He mentioned that I would be reading it in a low-ceilinged room and that the coffee I was drinking had gone cold. He said I should not be alarmed, that alarm would not help me. Then he described the scar on my left hand. I have a scar across the knuckle of my left index finger from a bike accident when I was 9. Small thing, mostly white now. You wouldn't see it unless you were looking. He described it correctly, including which finger and how the skin puckers when I make a fist. The letter was signed with a single letter, not one of my initials, just a curl of ink that could have been an E or a G. I did what a normal person does. I read it 3 more times, looking for the trick. Then I turned the envelope over, held the paper up to the light for any modern watermark, and pinched the back of my hand hard, just to make sure I wasn't sleeping through some kind of fever. The paper was old, the ink was old, there was no trick I could see. I brought it upstairs the next morning. My advisor is not a dramatic guy. 60s, brown cardigan every day of the week, has been doing archival work since before I was born. I put the letter in front of him and told him what it said. He read it twice, once fast and once slow, then he took it down to the lab himself. The paper came back as mid-19th century ragstock, consistent with New England mills of the period. The ink was iron gall, aged, not a modern reproduction. There was no evidence the letter had been tampered with in any way. It had been folded exactly 3 times, and the folds had oxidized at the creases in a way that took decades to form. My advisor sat me down and used the word coincidence 4 times in the same meeting. He said the scar detail was the sort of thing that reads specific but describes almost anyone. He said my name spelling might be a regional survival I didn't know about. He said all of this kindly. He also stopped meeting my eyes when he said it. I went back that night and translated the other 5. The second letter mentioned my mother by her first name and referenced the small town in Ohio where she grew up. The third described the apartment I was renting on Beacon Street, down to the color of the tile in the bathroom and the fact that the radiator on the west wall made a knocking sound at night. I hadn't told anyone about the radiator. I hadn't even complained to my landlord yet. The fourth was longer. It talked about a decision I was about to make regarding graduate school, and it laid out the 2 options I was weighing against each other. I had told no one about the second option. I hadn't told my girlfriend. I had barely admitted it to myself. The 5th letter was the worst. It described the exact folder I was working from, described the bootlace on the bundle, and thanked me, in advance, for opening the letters in the correct order. The 6th was one line, centered on the page. "We knew you would find them." That one was dated September of 1887, according to the top of the page. The paper on it was the oldest of the 6. I brought the full translations back to my advisor. He read them at his desk while I stood there. When he was done, he lined the pages up in front of him and looked at them for a long time without saying anything. Then he asked me, in a voice I had never heard from him before, whether I would consider putting the folder back where I found it and letting someone else finish the catalog. I said yes, the folder is still down there, as far as I know. I haven't been back to the basement since. My advisor emailed me the following week and said the project would be reassigned in the spring. He didn't say to whom. 2 weeks ago, I got a package at my apartment. No return address, no postmark I recognized. Inside was a single envelope, cream paper, folded 3 times. My name on the front in brown ink, spelled the Cornish way. I haven't opened it yet. And so we emerge from the darkness, changed but still breathing. I'm genuinely grateful you were here with me. Which thread's going to be your companion? Tell the comments. The vault is vast and ever expanding. Stay sharp. I'll find you when the lights go out again.